I actually meant to. All right, so yeah, yesterday we covered a little bit of ground with something called order and chaos. I was just coming through thinking about church stuff as usual. So heaven, hell, God, devil kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, with like, it's kind of funny because in this schema of pantheon that we have, the archetypes, um, human and animal are almost in the middle, right?
Uh-huh.
And then there's like a long chain of chaos and a shorter chain of order.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's
Because
that.
there's four.
Hmm?
Because there's four areas or four triads.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so there's that. I kind of went into thinking about that, and what's I think the main takeaway there is the fragmentation, because our systems are tend to be in this loop, right? In the strange loop that's constantly feeding itself at every level,
Uh-huh.
to almost every level. Um, but when you fragment that into a hierarchy, you get this, top down only sort of view where there's no self reference. There's just otherness and across the board, and that's
Yeah.
where this seems like chaos. This seems like order, right?
Hmm.
So that was kind of like a vision I had, which is going to be useful for teaching purposes. So
That seems to line up with the typical this self-reference thing where the embodiment process or whatever, where you kind of take the fundamentals and feed them into the
interesting thought there. Something like the concept of the Holy Spirit, in a sense that it's a speaker. It's something that's from within you, right? Speaks to you from within, kind of deal.
Mhm.
Well, it's almost as if you take the order part, right, and align it so that it comes up through the chaos. Oh,
Uh-huh.
he he's saying hello.
Oh, hi, Lanky. Yeah.
He can't hear you, so
Oh well.
yeah. Okay. No, you gotta say. You gotta say. You want to watch? You can watch.
I was thinking about that.
So like that.
So
That's the Holy Spirit in my head right now, quote unquote. Like I'm using the metaphor, of course.
in the two extremes we have of order and chaos, order comes out as I guess state in the highest
Hmm.
like manifestation of it.
And then certainty is the highest chaos.
Right. And but you still have they bleed into each other though. Like
Right.
from they diffuse and infuse each other.
Right. And then that phrase "God is in control" kind of rings a bell here, if you think about it,
Mhm.
right? Because even the chaotic, if you think about it, so there's like that ordering of the chaotic, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's anyway, like that's all kind of related and relatable.
I had a thought about that it's like what parts of this do you want to focus on? What can you change and what can't you change? And the chaotic parts is it's more like about accepting kind of thing. Like you can't really impose order down onto it, but it's kind of your situation.
Right, we had another insight about that regarding like growing like a plant and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that's neat. So you want to focus on what you can change which is the higher up, like the state towards the state.
Right, right.
Weird.
So it's like this is where we get really tricky and set ourselves apart from like this whole state's bad and all of that crap, right? Because that's not what we're saying, and really, what we're saying is something fundamental to the nature of states rather than um,
Yep. Well, state flows out from the like how the APS um, uh, what do you call it? Like, what's the word? Quantifies everything and creates borders and whatnot. It's when you go outside of your own mind, out into the world, into the shared space, you're doing that by mediation, by infusing symbols into the space. So it's automatically the state is going to be um, going to have this APS attribute to it, kind of.
Well, it's fully APS based,
Hmm.
right? It functions on top of it. Without the APIs, there's nothing to state.
Yeah,
Like there's nothing it could form from.
and I think that this is where, like, I think Zumi kind of, I don't know if he either conflates this or doesn't really separate it properly, but he, I think he talks about the APS as being a materialized order as well, like the like externalized memory and that kind of stuff,
Mm-mm.
without really making a distinction that it's actually augmenting something that, well, of course he knows that, but it's augmenting something that's a mental process.
So, like most people caught in their spectacular view, right? It's all concrete objects to them, externalized, right? Well, what we're doing is we're reflecting that from the internal perspective,
Hmm.
right? So that's what I think I'm doing really anyway, is I'm taking that. Don't Lincoln. He's just dripping his juice onto the thankfully paper. He was dripping it. You can see it right there on paper, thankfully. Anyway, yeah, Zumi is seeing like Zumi's tunnel visioned, I think. Like, no offense to Zumi, of course, but I think he's got a very narrow definition. It's the same as with the board, in my opinion. It's a narrow view of the same
Yeah.
thing. Uh, all I, I'm all I think we're adding to that is we're broadening it, right? Taking that
Yep.
pinpoint light and just shining a whole
Hmm.
freaking
And it kind of neutralizes everything too. So you don't have that the fight, the that whole dichotomies and everything, or what would you, how would you say?
well, you don't have competing ideas. You don't need to compete
Like
with ideas.
the state is bad. That
Oh,
kind of
oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. That,
model kind of blows that stuff away, and it's like, well,
right.
these
It,
happen, these things happen.
it resists it entirely. Yeah. Um, Even despite our own instincts, right? Like we gravitate towards state bad, right? What
Yeah,
it's kind of like our own work is showing. Not really. That's not the
yeah.
case. So
It's there's the language isn't really there for saying, oh, the dysmorphic state is bad, the ISO state is good.
yeah, like we're working with what we've got, but whatever.
Hmm.
So, so all that said, I kind of think when it comes to relaying that stuff to others, it's not the priority. This is more like you know how like we're building stuff bottom up right now.
Hmm.
It's important for us to know have these pieces. So all the work we've done for Portal Mountain as a concept, rather not the chat rooms, not the functional parts, but the that flowed from it, but rather the fundamentals of Portal Mountain and whatnot. We needed that structure so we can build a foundation that's complete.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You really want to be in the position where you have the core materials, and then the things that flow out write themselves.
right. So to add to that, what I mean is we don't need to necessarily teach all of that detail when you're guiding somebody coming like from participation into membership and all of that kind of stuff. What I'm finding through just like my limited experiences and experiments with trying to teach Lisa some fundamentals of guild stuff. There are
Uh-huh.
certain topics that just don't do much for the for communicating anything, especially initially. Um, and there's like this kind of an interesting problem I found that like you can't just lay down any theory, right? Which makes sense when you step back and think about it. You can't
Yep.
just like throw theory at a person. Lincoln, I know, I hate that. So yeah, that
Yep.
stuff tends to be completely uh, almost repulsive to individuals. So
Yep.
there's a silver lining though, and I think I may have stumbled into it.
What's that?
Um, boil it down to the fact that it makes sense to execute things through constraint protocols. Like that's the initial narrative.
For any temperament?
Any like any well, any temperament approaching them from the narrative approach, the bonfire. That comes through because of participation is on that level as well. There's a crossover, right? The system's like this, if you will. There's the coherence, and here's the temperament, and it's kind of like this. Everything is in everything. So
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
so just because you're approaching somebody who's academic, right? It doesn't mean that you can't use a narrative approach because the
Yeah.
academy, right? It's still combined together,
Well, it's unavoidable in the concrete anyways. That's how you connect with somebody.
right?
Or
So what happened was is like, what's the as I was trying to approach Lisa with this and that, and just seeing what just seeing what's ignored. Lincoln, quit it. No. Yeah, when you have so many different options, so what you want to do is you want to cut out all the insignificant things so that you can approach that person. And what resonates with most people is the most broadest truth, right? And the truth is, and everybody has that experience. You don't see, this is the key there. You don't layer it onto the model. You layer it onto right at their experience point, and that is execution of protocols, execution of constrained protocols.
leads to good results.
No, leads to any results. You want to do anything, right? There is a
Yeah,
you have to take a certain set of actions, and you certainly can't take a certain other set of actions, specifically ones that would disrupt everything you're doing, and expect a result. Like that's everybody's experience who's ever done anything in their lives,
sure.
right? In order to succeed at anything, you got to take a certain set of actions constrained by a certain set of parameters.
Okay.
Stop it. I will freaking kill you. Toddlers. You left. What is he eating? Oh, who cares at this point? Just ah. Anyway.
Mhm.
Uh,
Okay, so even devotional temperament should understand this.
right.
But it sounds it's this is a pragmatic.
It's a no, no, no. You combine the two. So you give them the narrative that it makes sense to follow
Mm,
constrained protocols.
right. So the um, this is a form of the isomorphic cosmological narrative.
Yeah, just really boil down, really down to earth. So that's the first part of their triad, right? And then you kind of commitment to that and execution of that.
Yeah.
So that covers just like, so now let's put this into the context of what I was trying to say about the natural guilds and how that fit into all of this. Well, that was education, right? This was a relay of information that it was internalized by the other person, right?
Yeah.
You offered guidance. So when that happens, right, that is part of education about education. No, sorry. No. Sorry. You express that. I'm just trying to I'm trying to formulate the steps that I've. It seems that seems to have got me anywhere.
Hmm.
So it's you start with this basic nugget of execution to start the commitment and execution, right? Then you relay the fact that this is a form of education, right? Do like that relay that what just took place.
Okay.
This is necessary because you're building like this is an isomorphic structure already because I'm relaying where the links are. So you say this is the education. So what is education? You cover. This is where you start the basis. Okay, well, education is about this, what you just did, and also about itself, which handles something called the guild, right? Just it's enough to just label it at this point. You don't need to go into detail, and then
Hmm.
you just go, okay. So now you're behaving as the education guild, right? You've sort of taken that role. So
Hmm.
so the next step is education about the natural guild itself, essentially, which begins with education about itself. So, what is teaching going to teach you about? Look, now that we've covered this, what is this whole education program really, right? So we
Hmm.
saw a part of it. Now let's get into what it is. So this is the self-reference already established, right? And so naturally, you don't stay there because that's completely useless. You turn all of this as details for your head as an educator, not for their head as somebody following it, following the procedure. So you establish the nugget, you call it education, you then turn the subject onto itself, which is essentially the natural guild stack. That's the only education that we cover through this part.
Hmm.
Um, and so the very next guild on top of that is health, right? So you begin to turn the education guild onto health issues, and you cover the basics there, which is nutrition and so far, nutrition and fitness, as far as I've been calling it.
Hmm.
And you start directing towards those things.
And is that going to be, or would that be like a fractal reflection of education? Like
Yes, immediately.
you're going to be using this. What the first thing you learned was that execution of constrained protocols
Hmm.
leads to results, um, and then this is how you use it in this domain of health. And
Right. Immediately you jump to that next level, but in all of that, you're still within the education guild
yeah.
because you're educating.
Hmm.
The execution, it comes through their commitment,
Hmm.
right? The guidance is what I'm
Yeah.
describing. And this is how it seemed to flow naturally, which kind of surprised me, but not really. I got the idea to try it this way just by reading over the natural guild stack, and it's like, wait a minute, if I did it like that, because I mean they are built like they're meant to go from inside out.
Yeah.
So education regarding like you don't start with the details of the natural guilds. You start off with, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is concern ourselves with health and fitness, which I mentally went another step up to see if it'll work further, and like another step. So I went to environment, and I'm like, well, first of all, yeah, sometimes health does take precedence over and above the environment. Like you will sometimes uh, pursue health at the expense of environment, right? Like that is a possibility, but safe for those circumstances, right? Like all of that happens within a certain context of the environment. It's the most immediate next. That's the next guild. So that's so I compare that to how do we teach that, and that seems to flow quite well.
I don't know if it's a coincidence, but they kind of line up with like neural OS, organism, and environment.
Backwards, you mean?
Yeah.
It's not. It's not a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But like the rest of the guilds are not quite so linear.
Right.
Like they're mostly horizontal, right? But when it comes to like broadening bit by bit one's domain of knowledge, right? In terms of the natural guilds, this seems like the logical. I already did some. I have a place in mind. I already did some. I have a place in mind. I searched out and I have a place in mind. I'm going to write up a small letter today. I'm on plan. Where was I? I think I said. I think it's seems like a natural progression.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it's kind of like the gateway to the other guilds. You kind of go from inward out, and then from there it's kind of a mess or horizontal.
Like you say, yeah, you use data for this. You use data for like technology for this.
Mm-hmm.
But like the technology guild could be completely about. So now that you know everything about the environment, everything. Now that you know how to constrain yourself regarding the environment, which is what it's really going to be about, those kinds of those the technology guild could be responsible not for the creation of technology, but the how should this technology be used in correlation with this constraint,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I think that would be its more basic function, and that bleeds into my spiel about outsourcing. Right, the outsourcing is actually quite significant in this model. We're not the state trying to maintain production. That's that those are truths, if you will, beyond besides the point. We are more concerned with how all of those realities are managed ultimately, because our problem is the overreach of management to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just natural for it to be in that domain. I think. I mean, this is all to be verified, of course. So, as usual. By the way, I can see part of your house there,
Oh yeah.
just in case you were here. You can see my wall.
Part of my house.
Yeah, you can see part of mine. Right there, just like this line of blackness.
Mm. Oh, it has been revealed.
Not really. Can barely see any of it. Oh yeah, now I know where you are. This is the kitchen.
There's a bottle of water.
Yep. I remember moving stuff around there. on my screen, my head is right above it. So when you squeezed it, if it like had a spray, it would have probably like went behind my screen.
Mm-hmm. I had a new idea for a word. Remember we were using alternate reality?
Yeah.
I think realm might work there.
And realm's not triggering. I guess it's triggering is reality.
Yeah.
But okay, well, how would you define realm in this case? Because I'm almost tempted to say overlay.
According to a dictionary, a field or domain of activity or interest.
That's it?
Yeah, I think. Well, that's the short version.
Lincoln's falling asleep, honey. Linky. He's falling asleep in the chair. I think he's really sleeping. Okay.
Trying to find that chart where we even had that
Which chart?
with the AR in it.
I like your roles chart too. We need
Yeah,
to we need to memorize it.
a lot of good charts.
We need to memorize it and then copy some of the dialogues off of Portal Mountain,
Yeah,
and then have like
yeah.
those individual roles take part in the conversation instead of.
Yep.
That's gonna be fucking huge.
Just find and replace.
Not
But
that, but the final work.
oh, all the dialogues. It's kind of a never-ending work, like that. At least that aspect.
Well, it's not
Definitely.
going to be any dialogue. It's going to be relevant, and sure, it's going to be a living sort of kind of a thing. But not everything's going to make it into it, of course.
Mhm. I wonder if I've made a chart for that with AR in it. I
Couldn't tell you.
must have.
Oh, I joined the gym.
No.
What?
And pigs fly?
I joined the gym today.
You getting buff?
I get 2 personal trainer sessions,
Oh yeah.
and then I'm going to try to squeeze as much information out of them as I can so that I can do some routines.
Which one? Which gym?
What's it called, honey? The gym? World Gym.
Oh yeah.
The Kozlov. It's actually here, closer
World,
here.
yeah.
You go to LA, right?
Yeah. This guy I know, Daniel. He's black. He's apparently a trainer there.
Okay.
Yeah. He showed up to our alpha course at church. Daniel. Yep. He's a really cool guy. Very relaxed and whatnot.
Hmm.
Definitely a seeker.
Yeah. Okay.
hmm
Well,
So if you see him, I think he wears glasses. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyways.
we have a lot of translatables,
Yep.
and especially now with the deities coming into place, that's going to be even a broader.
Are there any more charts to be made or modified?
Fuck if I know.
Yeah, we have to.
No, I
We have to
know.
keep pumping out the charts.
Charts are charts, but we have to put content too. He's falling asleep again. Just falling asleep in this chair. Family life, yay.
Uh-huh. Keep eat.
Why do I keep it? Yeah, that's Brian.
Who? Where's me?
He's touching the screen. He's like, who's that?
Hi, Linky.
It's because I'm holding him by
Yeah,
the elbow.
I know. Oh, yeah. Wow. Wow. Yes.
He loves people's noses. Where's the... Say stuff?
Yo.
He can hear you now.
Hi, Linky. Hi, Linky. Hi. Hi, Linky.
That's so crazy.
Hi.
Na
Do do do.
na na.
Do do do.
All done? He's all done.
Okay.
All right. Let's get you back to my earphones. Alrighty. Back to silence.
Yep. Good.
No, I put it in my earphones. I can hear him a lot better in the earphones. Except for that. Oh God. Don't show me that stuff. That's terrible. Hey? What's going on? What? I didn't hear any of that.
Dealing with biologicals. No.
Me too, all the time.
Yeah. Oh,
No, no. So what are you doing? Just looking for charts?
yeah, I was wondering if we have any or a need for updates.
Oh, let's not do that right now because that's just gonna waste the meeting.
Waste a meeting. Well, we should just have more.
So just remind me after you said you had some insights yourself. We didn't cover those yet.
Oh, which ones? I kind of, I think I went over that on chat. Just a
Uh,
few like names and stuff for things.
Link, don't touch that, please. Let me see here. Whether you lie. You left me a huge text of wall that I didn't finish reading yet. I remember
Oh,
that.
what? Just now?
No, a while ago, before the comp, before we started, and then we were discussing about docs, and then something regarding oh yeah, something from Alphabetica with Zumi talking nowhere and no now here.
Oh yeah, it's a really old chart of his. Just I didn't even really look at it, but um, I'm sure there's some bridge to build there.
Well, yeah, APS. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but so where does he even say APS here now? So nowhere. He was talking about that being the ideal um,
Right, which is like
philosophy.
archetypical kind of stuff,
Yeah. Um,
or typical.
language and communication is at the top. I'm gonna open this. um, yeah, I just thought there might be some interesting stuff there. It looks like he updated with some. Maybe he didn't update it. Maybe it's old.
I don't. Do you think he's still actively working on his stuff,
Um,
or is he just regurgitating?
well, uh, I know that he wants to try and materialize his vision, whatever he's got going into like a movie or a documentary or something, which he could do anything that he wanted because anything he says has a whole bunch of people um, basically listening and a lot of talent in the network.
He's got a dirty ladle.
Uzumi.
Yeah, the dysmorphic APS agent. It's Mr. Smith. Just disrupts everything.
Yep. But it's cool because I know that we're all obviously working in the same space. And what I think Zumi brings to our work, at least, is all this context and this, how you like to say can just outsource a bunch of crap. Well, he's basically running on like the actual history of philosophy and all this kind of stuff that would be pretty easy to tap into. As for people who are like, well, um, science and philosophy already are there, so what are you doing off in your little corner, right? So we can then link to all that through Zumi's work.
Yeah, a lot of the model is actually from philosophy as well, like the APS and the whole Plato's forms are quite related,
Mm,
right? Memetics and the whole Indra's net um, idea. I've always called it a Frankensteinian monster, right?
yep.
It's because it is. You got the board on top, a little bit of zoomy below it, fucking some philosophies underneath that with like sprinkling of this and that.
Yep.
So that's fine. It's fine.
Uh-huh. Have you tried and making any introductions yet on the docs? Remember we were talking about standardizing, somewhat standardizing.
I got two introductions so far. I don't have a Guild Dynamics one. I don't have a Mechanics one.
Yeah,
But
and
I have one for Memetics and I have one for
those are live.
yeah, for chronology. I don't really understand the need for title change still. Like I'm not
Okay, fine.
sold yet.
That's just a suggestion, and then it would also become too generic because there's probably already things titled that, and they're not really.
Yeah,
So
spectacular civilization points to the model really.
yeah. Hmm. Yep. Da-da-da-da-da.
It's interesting that I started the model off of the what's called the Abhidharma, the higher Dharma thing, all of the breakdowns that they have.
Yeah.
But the breakdown of things like the aggregates, the elements, the um, like all of the archetypes, all of that, all the temperaments, everything to do with all of that is actually going to make it into mechanics because that's the thing that glues all the bits and pieces together.
Hmm. Yeah. And mechanics, so it is a document. We're having an academic document for that, academic type document, right? So I remember we were talking about Portal Mountain as being uh, more a manifestation of it, I guess, or a materialization of it.
So I guess the question is, are we back to making it closer to the original, or is it going to be those dialogues, or the dialogues are going to be something supplemental?
Hmm.
Because if they can be something supplemental, then that can just open up a new category of kind of material, not document material, but like
Yeah. Yeah, I think we went over this problem probably when before we even really started writing the documents. And we were expecting that each temperament would kind of potentially bring its own view into the other temperaments. So like you would have an academic document for everything, for all four. But then you would also have maybe like these dialogues, for example, might be more of like a mechanics angle, and you could have dialogues for each of the academic, the whatever.
yes, yes, yes. He's got a point at the screen too.
Good job.
uh,
Yeah, so there we go.
yeah,
Um,
so that gives us another basket of stuff, right?
yeah. So if mechanics we have dialogues, for academic we have documents,
Oh, I like this.
Um,
I don't know what to do for the other two though.
yeah, I'm just trying to.
What other form of media are there?
Oh, well, like, so, well, for pragmatic, you might have, well, no, well, I don't know, I'm just thinking like training session, but that's kind of like is a dialogue, but
So
uh,
what we're doing right now could actually be more for a narrative or like a podcast,
hmm,
like or a blog entry. Oh, just short snippets of narrative,
right?
short story. Wow, and the narrative is actually pretty open for a lot of different media. If we go that this route I'm thinking of right now,
Yep. Hmm.
because if you think if it, just for a second, if most of the world right now is in quote unquote narrative mode, or or in devotional temperament, as the majority are, then they devote their time to this video, that video, this blog entry. Lincoln, get down right now! Why do you make me have to do that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So there's lots of options for these and
So
those
is dialogue enough for mechanics?
no mechanics is going to look like Jeb.
How
Yep.
was that?
So dialogues and just like paragraphs of like what the dialogue was about and like how to think
Yeah.
how to interpret
Yeah, the
it.
guide. Uh,
That's the structure of Jeb. Jeb was more about its own subject though, so but its structure was actually chapter by chapter was like that.
uh-huh. Cool, cool.
I think that would work.
Uh-huh. And where does Portal Mountain fit into that? That's it's ideally supposed to be something like that, isn't it? Like you encounter
We're
something.
bleeding back into document territory again. Hmm. So yeah, what I just described. Fuck, I don't know. Hold on. Lincoln, stop it. You can't fit that much in your mouth. Is it just taking it as a challenge?
Hmm.
So we have a lot of concepts. I think mechanics is the thing to pull them all together. But that's the document. So what did we have for the other kinds of document? We had
We just had a
documents.
dialogue and document.
Stop it, Lincoln. Put it down. Just eat what's in your mouth. He's like a freaking squirrel right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a little lost as to what we're going to be doing there.
The thing that gets me is with mechanics, there's that, it almost seems like there has to be that almost alive, like how we have the chats where you may have a guide. Like
Yeah,
it's
I think that's for that format that I was talking about, the dialogue plus
mhm,
guidance to it, should fit that niche of the document for mechanics.
right. Yeah.
But that could be select, like those dialogues and the ones that we can have as dialogues could be very different. But again, like I don't know what hmm, okay. I don't think we have a secondary material platform yet.
Hmm.
So we have an academic one. Okay, let's build up. Academic one is yeah, I think instructional stuff is the next step. So manuals, instructional videos, instructional audio.
Okay, I think we can look at our chart for what we might
That's true.
put here. So
Lincoln, sit your butt down. Sit down. Because you're laughing with him, he thinks it's a game. But he thinks it's a game. Thank you for sitting. I don't know if it's useful to actually block it. I don't, no idea. No, Lincoln. No. Sit down now.
now you've done it.
For the umpteenth time.
So academic, pragmatic, devotional,
Sit down.
perceptive. And so then a document isn't just any document. Um, it has to be getting at, I'm thinking um, like what is more essence of academic? Um, it's the in between. It's the mimetic. You're somehow getting to the mimetic beyond the categories of APS, but using that to see beyond, um, to see the deeper inner workings of that temperament is kind of the idea of the document, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just surface level or even pragmatic or practical, like this is how you do this is how you do this within
Mm-hmm.
this temperament, but you're going beyond that to this is the archetype flows that are being captured or
Yeah.
directed.
Yeah, it pertains to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Um, so that's what a document is for. Um, so you'll have the academic document, a pragmatic document, devotional, perceptive documents.
And those are already covered.
Yep, and really, the only one who may be really willing or wanting
Smells
to engage is an academic.
good. The only one that wants to engage them.
Yeah, a document. maybe
I like
academic.
full on engaged on their own, yes, but they could be led there through a different
Oh,
path.
yeah. So the document level is basically like mastery.
Right. That's another way to looking at it as well.
Hmm. Okay,
I think that's a more useful way of looking at some of them.
that's interesting.
But the document that you tackle first depends on your coherence level too. Like the mimetic document is at the level of mastery versus Lincoln. No, I'm wrong. The mimetic document is at the level of membership. The participation document is for is guild dynamics. The guest document would be your chronology,
Hmm.
and mastery would be the perceptive.
Interesting.
It's the same division you
Are
see in
you
the
sure?
layers.
Is
It's
it
just,
not all just bumped up by one? Because what does a guest even get you?
you need to get them to commit. That's how they
That's
participate.
participation.
The committed are participating.
Yeah.
The uncommitted are guests.
Yeah.
So
So,
they are still need to be convinced to participate.
right, but that threshold is
It's broken down by chronology. Chronology tells them why they should, right?
hmm.
It
Yeah.
has that feel tone to it of like you're an outsider. Now this is what makes you an insider.
Hmm.
Oh, sit your butt down. Excuse me. Lincoln, honey. Am I doing this? Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
has returned.
Hello.
Yo, yo, yo.
You're back?
I'm back.
Oh, cool. I'm heating up some chicken.
We're baking some cookies. Lisa
Oh,
is.
yeah. Cool.
Gotta get a right start for that gym day tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you see Daniel, say hi.
Some random dude just comes up to him, is like, some guy named Brian says hi.
Yeah. Brian from Alpha.
Brian.
So I was thinking about coherence. The way that I was thinking about it was, okay, a guest. Well, I was thinking like a guest, they're not even going to read chronology
No.
because they have
No.
no commitment.
No. Chronology is going to be for somebody who is teaching them. Like,
Right. Well, yeah. It depends on what you're measuring the coherence. Like,
uh, so this is the role of education right there to assess and determine these things. It's kind of like, how else do you educate a person, right? Like, you assess where they're at, you
yeah,
assess what they need still, and you assess how they do something. Lincoln, and you assess how they approach certain things, and they try to assemble something out of that. So I've kind of worked out a small template potentially, or the core of a small template on that one. Um, we've yet to actually develop it into something useful, but I think this is the right way. Um, both based on introduction of subject and its immediate use and its immediate usefulness for the individual. You're
like
more. Hmm?
if we're talking about coherence with the guild, just in the most broadest sense, um, like I don't see a guest as even giving you any attention.
A
Um,
guest? No. You're misinterpreting. A guest is like, like, okay. Let's look at the more practical example of church. A guest would be somebody who doesn't go, right, and has been brought there by somebody to just perhaps check it out. They have zero interest otherwise in going.
right.
Lincoln, stay here now.
Okay. And as far
Right?
as their effective coherence with what's going on in the system, it's basically zero.
Right. They don't know anything, so they can't respond on those in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
They might already be more coherent than they know. It's a matter of translation. So that would translate to participation almost immediately upon understanding.
Okay, so the way that you just described the documents lining up with the coherence was that for these people, chronology is what you give them or what you use to teach them.
Yeah, so not used to teach them in this on the coherence level of a guest. It doesn't make sense to teach anybody anything.
Yeah, this is where I'm talking about. The
But armed with that information, right? Subject matter and what the kind of things you could potentially lead into in the conversation would
Mhm.
probably hover around these areas of concern of like the commodification process or whatever that translates to in normal conversation, the plateaus of no
Yeah,
return kind of deal,
yeah,
the
because you're interacting with stories, with people. People are like walking stories.
right, and this is the story, but it just needs on that level to be translated to something a lot less me
Hmm.
and more the cookie. May I have a piece? Oh, cookie.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Can I have a piece? Mmm.
Hmm. Very good, honey. Yeah. So armed with that information, right, you can navigate their narrative through this template. Because remember, part of this process is also the personal one. So schooling, getting a job, moving out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they correspond to those plateaus as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, instead of jumping onto this civilization story, you just make it about them in their current situation easily. But because of their that isomorphism to this, you can use that information over here.
Hmm.
So you get a lot of leeway. Because again, that's why it is a template and not an actual history or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Translate and go. But to do that, you need to know it.
Yep. Hmm. Interesting.
Yep.
It makes sense to have actually mechanics under mastery because um, that's when the loop completes and you interface with the narrative of someone else to bring them up through the levels again. And you need all three of those, obviously.
Yep. That's why it seemed. I never thought of it until today, though.
Yeah, 'cause I think we had everything bumped up one and not including guests before.
Yeah. That's cool.
Hmm. So, but even still, some people are going to have different temperaments. So this will be fine and work very well for people who are of a devotional temperament, at least to get them their foot in the door.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's thinking like more abstract,
Yeah, you
it's
immediately go for the guild. You go for education of. You still go through the whole commitment to protocols.
hmm.
You still go through that phase. You just shorten the narrative to not include chronology right now. You move on straight up into territory of this is how you do it this way, this is how you do it that way. So there's room for approach both. One is interested in the why, the other is interested in the what.
What? Yeah, give me a sec.
No, he's helping Valeria with something. I could have taken them before. Come here. Want to sit with Dad?
Hey, yo.
Word up.
So you're coming back to the guild dynamics part.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, you just don't go into the because that's what's happening with say Lisa. Like it's cool, like all the natural concerns and stuff like that, but it's not helpful in actually like okay now what do I do with it? It's helpful to somebody like us simply because we're like looking at all the different other parts and putting it all together. But
Hmm.
for somebody who doesn't do that, it's not going to be useful.
Right.
So you just skip over the why and just like you still create the initial narrative. You just skip on the all the crap that goes on if it doesn't exist. If you're yeah, if you skip all the information regarding what happens if protocols are not constrained, right? You don't explain chronology unless it's
Because
relevant.
presumably it's already how they think.
Sure, or presumably that information can come in bits and pieces as you're extending dynamics.
Hmm.
So as you're going through education level one, right? You go um, you go through the whole process of okay, well, First things first is education. Education involves what? Health and fitness, all of that, mental health, fitness, nutrition. Um, Mental health is covered through education itself in a lot of ways. Um,
Hmm.
the rest of it is physical health, which is again feeds back into mental health as well. Other basics are like, like just there's probably going to be some bits and pieces from the model itself as in terms of like maintaining the coherence or increasing the coherence. So, but what those protocols look like, I'm not sure at the moment. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not sure what the lesson plan is. I just have a kind of a rough idea of what I want it to look like at the moment.
So, and a different lesson plan for a different temperament.
Not necessarily, actually, because if you think about it, this can kind of capture all. This can capture all temperaments, and maybe, hmm, we were wondering what each temperament could offer to this whole educational system. The academic being the documents,
Hmm.
the guide being the
Perceptive.
perceptive. So the education and the whatnot can be pragmatics. So like the actual lesson planning,
Hmm.
which makes sense to me.
Yeah, interesting.
And the devotionals, we will kind of cover that as well. It's the guy that talks to you. It's the guy that says that uses his knowledge of chronology to give reasons as to why this is a good idea to enro-
Hmm.
enroll into.
Council.
Yeah, or advocate or whatever you wanna. I forget what
Yeah,
we used.
council, I think.
So I think those are the secondary, or no, this covers all four.
Hmm.
And now you can kind of see all four in all four, because even the council that's using chronology, it's really pointing at guild dynamics through the model, right? It's inescapable that it's a hologram.
Hmm. Cool. And technically, anybody who's actually evangelizing is basically a guide.
Just sent you a little gem, by the way.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, there would be, but are they worthy?
Yeah.
See, without their lack of knowledge of mechanics. So mechanics is what would tie a master together. It's the master that can wield all other three properly.
Hmm. And wouldn't you see, depending on the coherence of the guide, an ability to guide at lower coherences, if that makes any sense? Like to be able to interface chronologically, you don't need such an advanced guide, like just to kind of.
And of course, it's going to be somebody who's more knowledgeable at a lower level is going to be able to relay some of that stuff, but just not
Mhm.
through the complete context.
Yeah, and you'll get the typical problems with evangelism.
Yeah. If
That's what they cause.
Yeah,
So.
which is why I'm not really keen on that happening in a lower coherence. I think the people are not masters, their job isn't so much to evangelize or anything to that effect, but it's to gain mastery.
Yeah.
in terms of what the guild needs. It's not more people necessarily. Like that, the idea of getting more people and all of that is actually secondary. It's the people that are in it already as what it's for. The evangelism part is just a happy after effect.
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna get that anyways when people get excited
Like I said, a happy, well, sure.
because you have membership. If you have membership, you have automatic excitement.
Sure. Or even participating in something so hopefully useful.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And this that kind of this new way, I guess, of putting those levels of coherence, because um, I was thinking, or we were thinking, membership was the level at which you um, were able to get that kernel, the core, like some core piece that just unfolds into the whole thing, and
Uh,
that's when, quote unquote, seen something. Like
yeah, so there's this kind of thing going on where you kind of get chronology here, right? So like if you say Pinky is the chronology, you
uh,
have uh you have guild dynamics over here, right? But you also can get the chronology like that. So if each line is is a guest participant member, so the participant is no longer introduced to chronology, but uses chronology to get into membership, so to speak, as a mental framework. Uh, what I'm trying to get at is like thresholds again. You're a guest. You're introduced through chronology, right? Past the participation point, you understand chronology. Therefore, you're working on guild dynamics and completing your chronology kind of deal. So once you pass that bridge,
mm,
it's kind of like an overlap. There's an overlap. So one is the old way of thinking, one is the newer way of thinking, but one deals with I'm a member. What are my responsibilities versus I'm the person getting somebody hooked on this. What are my responsibilities?
hmm,
All right. So this is where the discrepancy seems to be happening.
interesting. I'm gonna go eat for a bit, so if you want to chat later, we can.
All right. We'll continue this when the opportunity arrives.
Cool, man.
Cheers.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.